Hey, how you doing? My name is Chris. Welcome to my shop. Recently, I had the opportunity to meet a gentleman named Jack Perry. Super nice guy. Jack happens to own a company called the MiterSet. Recently, I went out to dinner with him, and then the following day, he asked me if I'd like to try out one of the products that he's offering. And I said, well, of course I would. Be happy to. Jack offers two products regarding the MiterSet. There's this version of it, the MiterSet Standard. And then there's this version of it here, which is the MiterSet for segments. If you want to do segmented bowls or any kind of a segmented piece, maybe you want to make a 6, 8, 12-sided picture frame, this is supposed to help you do it and do it very accurately using the miter gauge on your table saw. I've yet to use this thing, but I'm going to use it for the first time today to let you see, as I discover, if this thing is as accurate as I heard that it is. So let's get started. All right, before we put this thing through its paces, I want to go over with you some typical problems that at least I've had in the past when trying to do segmented pieces myself. When this pertains to whether I was doing segmented rings for like a bowl glue up, or if I was doing segments to put together like a beer mug. As you may remember, I did a video on making one of those. But there are some common problems that most people run into that this MiterSet is supposed to negate. So let me quickly explain what those are. Okay, what you see right here is a representation of a segmented ring. In this case, it's an 8-piece or 8-segmented ring. And you can start out here. We'll call this segment number 1, and you go 2, 3, 4, all the way down until you get to segment number 8 here. Here's the problem that a lot of people run into. If you figure out the angle on this in order to get a 360 degree, this angle here and this angle here is a 22.5 degree angle. That's what the angle you need to cut these at in order to make this circle happen. If your miter gauge on your table saw is off, or if your miter saw is off just a hair, maybe a little over 22.5 or maybe a little under 22.5, here's what ends up happening. You'll cut your pieces, and all of these joints here, 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 and even here will look fabulous. You'll go, oh, great. But then when you get to here, you're going to end up with a little bit of a gap that's going to look something like this. And the reason for that is, if you're off even just a hair, the miscalculation in that angle will compound itself as it goes around here and become greater to the point where it becomes very noticeable here. And obviously it becomes much more critical to have an accurate degree when you're using more segments. So if you're doing 12 segments, that little mishap will actually compound itself even more and possibly even leave you with a larger gap than that. The MiterSet is supposed to help prevent that. So let me get this set up. We'll go ahead and get it set up to go ahead and cut an 8 segmented piece ring on the table saw, and we'll give this a go. Now let me show you how this thing is set up to work. You can use this depending on which miter slot on your table saw you actually want to use. If you want to set it to using your left one, then you would leave the peg in the 0 position here, and then you would adjust this pin to however many segments you want to cut. In our case, we're going to be doing 8 today. So the miter gauge, when it's put in here, will be turned this way to the blade as it goes through the saw. Now, obviously, if you would rather use the blade that's to the right of the saw blade, you would leave this one here on the 0 and put your peg there, and that way the miter gauge would be tilted that way. But we're going to be doing it on the left-hand miter gauge miter slot that I have in my table saw today. So, and here's how you set it up. You get your marks, the weather set, and you go ahead and grab your miter gauge. And your miter gauge fits right inside that slot there. What you want to do is bring it up to both pegs. I'll show you how this is. Let me turn this around so you can get a better look. You set it up so it's touching both of these pegs, and then you just simply tighten your miter gauge down. Now that should be a perfect 22.5 degree angle as I cut the boards going through the table saw. Okay, the way I have this set up is I obviously have a stop block here connected to my fence just to get the initial measurement, because I want to do a piece that is roughly about an inch and a half long. And so that's how I take my initial measurement. From there, I'll just take the stop block and move it back down to in front of the blade so that we're not causing any pinching happening that's in here. We'll get our miter gauge set up to where I can put this in there. I've got a 3/4 inch piece of plywood on here right now, and I've got it set a little too long to fit in here. So I'll make that adjustment, and then we'll be running some 1 by roughly 1/2 inch stock through this to create our segments, and we'll go from there. All right, what I'll do is I'll take these segments and I'll lay some blue tape down, and we'll go ahead and get ready to tape those up, and I'll show you how accurate this thing is or isn't in 2 seconds. Okay, as you can see, I've got these all laid out and attached to some blue tape here. So let's see how this thing ends up looking. Now remember, the connection we're actually looking at is going to be the number 8 piece to the number 1. And if there's a gap there, then we know we're off. If there isn't, then we know this thing is as good as advertised. Let's have a look. I'd say that's pretty good. Now obviously some of these pieces just need to be pushed down and then pulled in a little bit, but that is about as dead on as you can get. That's pretty exciting. There you go. The MiterSet for segments. And it does, I'd say, a pretty good job. Gonna be happy to have that. Jack, thank you. Tell you what, if this interests you at all, and if you think you may have an interest in it, I'll leave a link down below to the MiterSet and the webpage where you can go to and get all the information for yourself on that. There's this one, obviously, for segments, and then there's the MiterSet standard as well that's available to you. But this thing, pretty darn accurate. I'm going to be happy to have it. You guys take care. Get out in your shops, make that first cut, and get something done. I'll talk to you later.